First, let me say thank you so much for everyone taking the time and investing in your own sort of development and learning and joining us here at Unveiled, Bridging the Gap to Sponsorship. I'm Jen Almashny. I'm joined by my colleague and partner in crime here, Jamie Reed. We're going to facilitate today's session, which is an open panel discussion, very much centered and rooted in our mission here at Unveiled, which is looking at the nature of sponsorship. How do those around you, how do you find those around you who can be advocates and support your development and growth, especially when you're not around? Different than that of coaching or mentoring. That's I think there's a lot of avenues where you take sort of control of your own destiny, of which much of that is underpinning a lot of the work that I know all of us do. But sponsorship is one of these really nuanced arenas that I'm excited to introduce our guests, who also a common thread that we have on our panel, and for myself included, are we're all leaders who have come into these roles in these industries where we're on the hot seat. We're on the front lines of driving exceptional growth for the organizations we've been a part of. And in my experience, in making a transition from a role where maybe you were more in a support-oriented and operational type of role, that when you step into the front lines and you're leading a big part of growth, I have learned in good, bad, and ugly ways of how do you lead through these really, really tough situations. And there's many things that I've learned about myself, particularly as a female leader, that I'm excited to also learn from all of you. But really the intention for today is to listen, to learn. With that said, I welcome Anu, Wendy, and Molly to today's discussion. But maybe I'll ask you ladies to share a bit about yourself, and then we'll dive right in. Anu, let's start with you.
Because my name starts with A. Jen. Thanks all for joining, many of you on your lunch hour. I'm Anu Bliss. I lead the digital commerce practice at the Emerson Group. I spent about 18 years at Johnson & Johnson with two of the three speakers on this call for some of the time. I have two kids and I live in New Jersey. It's nice to see you all.
I'll go next. I'm next in the alphabet, I guess. So hi, everyone. My name is Molly. Thank you for having me today. I lead up the digital sales channel at Sanmar, which is a private company out of Seattle. We manufacture apparel in the promotional product space. I was in the outdoor industry my whole career. I was at the North Face for several years. So Sanmar is pretty new to me, about 2 years. It's a new channel. I think I mentioned that at the company. And I live in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a stepmom to two young boys, 8 and 11. I guess they're not that young, but sometimes they act young.
They're still young. I have the same.
And I'll round it out. I'm Wendy Slisko, and I've spent about 20 years in consumer goods, working on iconic brands from Lucky Charms to Listerine. And really building a career at the intersection of commerce, innovation, and transformation. And that's really the space that I've gone into now around AI capabilities and the future of commerce. And so I've taken on a lot of white space roles in my career. That's because of really having sponsorship, and have been in 2 markets and global as well. So excited to be here. I have a 2-year-old son who keeps me busy a lot of my time. And I am actually based out of Toronto, Canada, but I've worked across the North American business.
Awesome. And maybe I'll round us out. I'm Jen Almashny. I also am a mom. You can see my kids here. Shameless, plug to show them off. Leilani and Mazen, who also, I feel like that's my main hat. My company corporate hat. I'm the president of Patu Solutions, which I've been with the organization now for almost 5 months. But I have worked very, very closely with Anu and Wendy, and I know, Molly, your paths have crossed with many folks who are on this call today too. So let's dive right in. As I mentioned, sponsorship is the center for us at Unveiled, and really helping anyone who's in a setting where you aspire to grow. And that doesn't have to necessarily be in a work setting or whatever it may be, but oftentimes there's points of time, these pivot points or intersections where you interact with someone that ultimately becomes someone who advocates tremendously for you. And I'm going to start, we'll make our way back around. So Anu, I'm going to start with you. Tell us any moments in time when you realized that someone was advocating on your behalf. And, in those moments, what did that do for your career trajectory as a result of maybe having someone in your corner?
So I never sought out sponsorship, and I feel like the best way for it to happen, at least in my experience, was very organic. I was placed on a very tough business, which was ultimately sold by Johnson & Johnson. It was the women's health business. And it was a very tough situation. I was put on a desk, and I went to this job specifically because I liked the manager very much. And 3 weeks after I joined, she said she quit and she was leaving the company. And I went back to my desk and cried because I didn't know anything. I was new to sales. I was new to brand. I'd come from an operations role. And the only reason I ended up in consumer packaged goods is because Pfizer had a daycare. That was the reason why I applied there. And I didn't know what to do. So I started, my constituents or my customers was a sales team, right? I was in a support function as an analyst, and I just started making calls and taking notes about all of their troubles, their complaints, what they needed help with. And when you look back at times when you're like muddling through stuff, it turned out somebody on our Walmart team saw like what I was doing and how I was trying to get through it. And I was miserable. Like I'd go home and cry every single day. I think of that job for the first few weeks. That friend of mine now, she's a dear friend of mine. She advocated to me. So new manager came in, a new director, right? They kind of blew up the team and started it over. And I think she saw she saw how I was struggling and how I was trying to make sense of all the chaos. And she started advocating for me without me ever knowing. We were acquaintances and colleagues, but I had no personal relationship with her. And because she did that, I started to get recognition spoken about when I wasn't in the room. And it really just had to do with me putting my head down and trying to figure it out. But just remember, when things are really tough, those are the times when people really take notice of you versus when things are just going well.
I think it's a really good point, because also I can empathize that in those very, very tough moments, I've also shamelessly, cried many times of just sheer stress or feeling like, oh, I don't know what's going on. And I agree that it's those moments where, what do you make of turning lemons into lemonade type of situation? So, and I can also attest that Anu, the first time that our paths crossed at J&J, I was also new in the role, joining the team. We were both on the e-commerce team, the US business, and everyone would always tell me, go talk to Anu. Go ask Anu. Anu is the person that you need to lean on. That even early days back then, you have very much passed along the torch in terms of becoming a sponsor and advocating in many, many different ways. So thank you for sharing that. And Wendy, maybe turning to you, Anu, coming from that sort of the sales arena, which I very much can appreciate, comes with a lot of pressure. You're on the front lines. You're oftentimes what everyone is like looking at for that point of growth. Wendy, you've been in commercial roles for a good part of your career. If you were to sort of look back, that have allowed you to continue to progress down this commercial type of growth roles.
Yeah, I think anyone who knows me knows that I'm very results driven. And so I've always loved the commercial space, because it's really at the intersection of where strategy, execution, and impact happens. And so that for me is like, when I drive impact, I get really jazzed, and I like to take a 360 view of the business. And so when you look at the commercial space, you have to have that understanding of, you know, what the consumer is, what the category is, and where the space is evolving. And so that's always been like a real passion for me in terms of diving deep and having that 360 view, but also being driven by an outcome and not just an activity. And I think in my going off of what Anu said, for me, the commercial space has always been a lot of white space. So you could always do a lot, drive a lot of impact, have a lot of dynamic consequence to the business in real time. And so that's where, for me, sponsorship has played a big role, because I've taken a lot of white space roles in my commercial experience. I, was, when I was 25 years old, very early in my career, I won a global champion award at General Mills for essentially discontinuing the entire cereal business and relaunching it. And so that was a real pivotal point in my career that kind of launched me into a space of learning very quickly in a 6-month period. And that's how I kind of got into the e-commerce space and leading transformation and where I am now. So I think those white space roles and having that sponsorship, especially when I went global and out of my local market, that required sponsorship. Someone was sponsoring me to say, I have a broad view that I can play in a global space and not just within a local market. So there's so much to, I would say, own and transform in the commercial space. And there's so many different areas of strategy and execution. And to me, it's not just about selling, it's really about shaping what's next.
I can appreciate that I'm sure when you volunteered for, or maybe got tagged to voluntold to step into your first white space opportunity, it takes a certain grit and tenacity and ability to operate in lots of gray. And I'm sure that feeds upon itself, that you start to build a reputation of, okay, you don't just do this, you're able to flex in these areas that there's no prescription, there's no playbook, which opens a lot of new doors and new avenues. So I think it's a good sort of lesson for me, and like, take the risk. There's always so much more upside in giving it a go, because you can pave your own destiny, and who knows who's going to see and allow more doors to open. And Molly, maybe in building on the theme of opening doors, I'm sure in the nature of complexity that you've led or different roles over your career journey. I'd love to learn just more about particular individuals or situations that have become those like opening doors for you in your career growth.
Sure. One of the kind of biggest sponsors in my career that's really opened several doors for me has been my current boss, who's the Chief Revenue Officer at SanMart today. And I think I mentioned before, I worked at the North Face for several years. And Steve actually hired me at the North Face. I think I had mentioned I had been in the outdoor industry for a few years. And in the outdoor industry, the North Face is kind of like one of the pinnacle brands, right, that everyone wants to work for. And I had gotten some experience selling on Amazon at one of my roles. And the North Face hired a new role, an Amazon sales manager. And I gunned for it. At that point, I had a lot of contacts, made a lot of big network in the outdoor industry. So I knew several people that worked at the North Face already. And I reached out and I said, hey, I'm going for this role. If you know Steve Cuthbert, if you could help me out, tell him you like me, tell him I'm good. And Steve likes to tell the story that I think in 2 days, he had like 6 people come into his office and said, you got to hire Molly Labonte. And so you mentioned it just now, Jennifer, but I think he really saw a lot of tenacity in me. I think he liked that. And then we started the interview process, and I was really, and now as I look back on it, it was almost maybe a little naive, but it worked out. I was very adamant about my strategy and what I thought would work and what I thought we should do to build an Amazon business at the North Face. And so I think he really liked my confidence. It's funny because we didn't actually end up going with my strategy. But again, I think even though he didn't necessarily agree, he really liked that I had a point of view. And to this day, I think he still likes that I always have a point of view. And so he hired me for the North Face role, opened up a big opportunity for me there where we grew the business. It worked. It was a big success at the company. So that was a big growth driving type of experience. And then I just thought it was worth it to mention, now he's hired me at SanMar. He put me in another brand new role at that company, big growth driving role as well. And I think it's just important for me to mention that, or to say to all of you that we have now built this really great trust between us. And I've, at the North Face, in the best way possible, I made him and both of us look really good. And now he trusts me to do the same thing at SanMar, I think. So yeah, tenacity, confidence, and I think that's created a lot of trust between us.
It's so well articulated. I literally wrote down trust, trust, trust. That at the heart and root of but you earned that. You demonstrated, and that was the seed that was planted for Steve, I'm sure, in seeing what he saw in you early back at the North Face, and then and I also love that you share that you had the tenacity to charge for it on an Amazon strategy, which was not accepted, which I could also relate to in so many fronts, that having a point of view and flexing your voice, which I know for me was very, very tricky early on in my career. And I had a leader that who I consider sort of my first sponsor. He was the VP of sales in my first role at J&J, which was on the medical device side of the business, a leader named Peter Menzies. So I would always go to him with the swag. All right, Peter, here's everything that I'm seeing. And I acted with conviction, and I was so clear on all the things that we needed to do. And I was in a sales operations role, so I was sort of behind the scenes. And Peter would help plant these seeds without me there, but also gave me the platform to push me to exercise my voice directly. So there was sort of this, he could see something in myself that I didn't necessarily see. And funny enough, when over time we built a level of trust, and then he helped open a door at J&J Consumer, which I moved to New Jersey. And the thing that he told folks to give me a shot in an interview was, Jen is going to make you look good, so I can also, when you said that, there is something to be said about when you come together as a powerhouse team with your sponsor or as a sponsor. There's something pretty awesome. Our common link, a new Wendy that we have together, the J&J path, maybe even outside of J&J. For you both, I know you both are sponsors and advocate for folks that you are really believe in. Tell me a little bit about, for the both of you, what do you look for wearing your sponsor hat? What are the qualities? What are the things that someone stands out that you really want to be the voice behind the scenes for any particular individuals?
I look for grit, intellectual curiosity, and emotional maturity. So especially in digital commerce, the intellectual curiosity to me is the most important, I would say, because you have to be able to let your ego fall away to learn stuff. And it doesn't matter if you're 23 or 53 like me, being able to say, I don't know, and being open enough to learn. And we're always so afraid that we have to know all of the answers. I notice, especially in our industry, or maybe this is the one I've been in, but I see in boardrooms, it's seen as a weakness to say you don't know. And I want to see us get over that. So, there's always a balance between trying to demonstrate that you're very capable, but I think being willing to continuously want to learn is the most important thing.
And I think the common theme, I think for me, is consistency. Someone just being very consistent in their just behaviors, even. Curiosity is one. Demonstrating that you're ready, I would say that comes for me in initiative, is always showing that you're stretching, always showing that you're stepping up without being asked, always wanting to take on more for even your own curiosity. Those that I've, sponsored, it's like, you're in a very distinct commercial role, but they want to understand the retail media side of the business, the supply chain operations side of the business, and really go deep. And so for me, that's like that, you're willing to have an open mind, A, stepping into a new role, and B, as Anu called out, always learning. And so that for me also creates kind of that trust that Molly talked about, is I can then trust that person if they're demonstrating that consistency and always curiosity. And then, just being ready. I think also for me, having kind of similar values in terms of how we operate and being that person that I can stand by is also very important to me. And really makes that be that glue that sticks you together with your sponsor.
You mentioned sort of this nature of really proactive, that you're sort of taking it upon yourself to push for yourself. And I can appreciate that I know in those, it's not always natural or easy for folks to do that. I think that, just sort of show up in a way that you kind of have to be really super vulnerable when you're trying to do something that maybe is really uncomfortable for you, or signing up and pushing your way and feeling like you have to be the expert, which then comes back to what you were mentioning, and like curiosity. And actually you get more high fives and points when you say, I don't know this, but I'm going to take the time and I'm going to exercise some grit to figure it out. And let's figure it out together. Molly, I'm curious, in the, where you've ever felt like you had to keep proving yourself in order to sort of get the hook in, and get, whether it's, with other decision makers, with other, especially the nature of the roles that you've been in. And how did you handle that and sort of stepping out? And I know it sounds like from the first story that you shared in terms of having a point of view and being with conviction, but maybe if you could offer some, advice and times you've overcome that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess vulnerability, I always feel like I have to prove myself, right? I'm in a high growth channel where they're expecting a lot out of me. I'm in a sales role. I'm in an executive role at the company. And so, I want to prove myself to my team, to my colleagues, and also make my boss look good every day. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of pressure around that. And I think the probably two big things that I really lean on, and the first one I think, in my opinion, is undervalued often, is listening, asking questions and listening. I mean, I think oftentimes leaders forget the value and the importance of that. And so I am constantly, working with my team, my colleagues, my leaders. I want to understand what is important to them. How are they thinking about things? And, that gives me power, right? When I can understand the motivations of others better. And so, yeah, listening and asking questions is a huge one for me, in this sense. And then I know we just brought up kind of being an expert, and absolutely, you don't have to be an expert in everything. No one expects you to be. No one is an expert in anything. Although I do want to add, as I've been in my career, the power in becoming an expert at something is big, right? Doing the work, researching things, asking questions, reaching out to external parties, classes. There's so many resources out there that you can become an expert at some things. That gives you a lot of power, has given me a lot of power, I should say, in the past, and confidence.
I'll put an extra vote on that one, because I do agree. My natural tendency is, I'm a thinker and an observer before I'll sort of insert myself. Now, there are times as I've grown up in my career that has to go fast. You have to insert yourself before you've really formulated exactly what you want to say. But at the same time, my confidence by practicing certain crafts and feeling really good at something, I can see where it builds sort of the level of confidence. And also like the list, I don't also want to underscore, you can build a really good level of connection when you like really listen, when you really try to pay attention and dig for folks on the other side, and whether it's a sponsor, whether it's other people in the room that you're trying to influence and share a perspective or find the common link, that's also such an important lens. We have our first question from someone, so I thank you so much for sharing this, Prananti. From Prananti to the group here, how do you discover what's important for someone you would like to be your sponsor?
Good question. I'm gonna jump in. I think when I think about my sponsors, I was also very like declarative in what I wanted. So when I think about my white space roles and who have kind of sponsored those, I was also, I would say I was declarative that I wanted to go global and I needed like a next big stretch role. How I learned that I would align with my sponsor, it goes back to, I think, some of the things we talked about. Like I very much got to know him very well and what was important to him. He was very driven, results orientated. So he liked the fact that I was consistent. He liked the fact that he even said to me, I never have to like ask you. You are like everywhere all the time. So I think it's just, working with them, even having more of those like conversations, getting to know them more. Some of those tidbits come out in terms of floats to the top of what you see is important. And then I've just been very declarative that like, this is what I want. And so I then come top of mind to be sponsored when you're showing that kind of consistency. And then, that sponsor happened to move into a global role. And I was the first person that he thought of because I had also very much voiced that was the next move for me to stretch myself in my career.
I'm laughing because Wendy has this ability to work with very, very difficult people. I could, because she was so incredibly competent. I mean, hats off to you, Wendy. I think what Wendy's speaking to, what I would speak to is, instead of thinking like what's important to the sponsor, it's more like what do they need, right? You're often representing people on various levels, their interests in the work that you're doing. Figure out what that is, what's in it for them, right? And so once you figure that out, if you can figure out how to accurately represent their needs and over deliver there, you automatically gain a sponsor.
Molly, any perspective?
Yeah, I guess I would just say like, I would maybe like how I'm thinking about it, or would reframe it, is like, you don't pick your sponsor picks you, right? So be good at your job, add extra value, like figure out how you can help the company elevate, and people will recognize that and they will want to, pull you along with them.
That's well said. Maybe I can share sort of a battle wound story that this prompts, because very early in my career, actually the second company I worked for coming out of grad school, I was in management consulting with, back then it was Booz Allen, became Booz & Company. And partners, I was a consultant, a junior level consultant, an associate, and then you had kind of everyone was charging to be on this partner track. And you had partners that, by nature of it, sort of care and feeding of certain, everyone had a partner that you were connected with, whether it was more of a mentorship, but their role really was to play like a sponsor. And there was one partner in my mind, I had a profile of, here's on paper the type of sponsor. This individual, his name was Justin. I want Justin to be my sponsor. He was driving the most business. He was the most pushy. he sort of scared the room, which for me, it was like, oh, I have a hard time speaking up. So he's going to be someone that can kind of be complementary to the things that I'm not comfortable with. And I tried to set up connections to sort of make that kind of, bond. And it was like oil and water. I had a hard time personally connecting. There wasn't a lot of things we could relate on, even the nature of things that he saw for me, I didn't see as my superpowers. And then I ran into someone in the cafeteria a woman who I didn't know was a partner. Her name was Deanna, and she struck up a conversation. She's like, great, let's grab coffee. And then later I found out she was a partner, and we had so many common ground, even outside of like the jobs to be done in that partnership model. And so I want to share that because you could run into and build a connection. I'll even, give a shout out to my boss, who's the CEO and founder of Pati, who joined. Thank you, Fred, for joining. We connected almost 10 years ago as a client partner exchange and just maintained a relationship. And he ultimately has become such a big advocate and sponsor. And who knows, didn't even know that after all this time that there was that kind of connection. So hopefully just any interaction can turn into something and spark something quite special. So with that, and I also want to encourage folks, please, thank you so much again for breaking the ice and sharing a question. Please submit any other questions you have. I have a few more that I have on my side. So maybe as folks start to think about questions you may have, I'll log one over to the three of you here. What's in one of those sort of unwritten rules that you wish that somebody told you about earlier in your career as you sort of pushed yourself and developed?
I'll go first on this one. I'm originally from the East Coast. I grew up on the East Coast, and I was young and from the East Coast and like super like ready to go, like very impatient, very like, wanted aggressive. And as I've now, had many more years in my career, I wish I had thought more about it is a marathon, not a sprint, your career, right? And I was told actually early in my career, and I use this all the time now for my team and for myself, I was told to be patiently aggressive. And lots of different things are going to happen in your career. Lots of opportunities are going to come your way. And I'll just say it again. It's a marathon, not a sprint, and try to enjoy it along the way.
I'll jump in. I think my advice is, or the unwritten rule is never lose yourself in a job. I feel like, my authenticity, integrity, and really alignment has to be there with a job. And there's so many times that I've been reprimanded for speaking up when I know that it's like the absolute right thing in my gut. It's like everything's screaming like we have to do this, we have to solve this problem, and being reprimanded for it. It just I sometimes have like really taken a step back, and it's really kind of knocked me down a couple pegs. And then I just realized like that maybe that wasn't the right role, or I was still being my authentic self. There was nothing I would change. I was really felt like that was what I had to do, and I've never really changed myself. So I think for me that's really been super important is maintaining that, and then realizing, I know you said early in your career, like just crying, like, but in those moments where you just feel like you're being asked to do something that's not in alignment, or you can't voice your opinion in a certain environment or role, those for me just I realize like I have to find a different way, because I don't want to lose myself in that job because of who I know I am.
I always thought being right was the most important thing, but the most important thing is also figuring out how to bring people along with you. because you can be right, and I'm still learning that, and walk away and say, this is how we should do it. Like, we should all be transforming how we're doing work, and consumers are shopping online and not in stores, and dummies, how come you don't know that? You're doing it when you go home. Why is it different when you walk into the door at work? And like, I can think all these things, but unless I figure out how to appeal to people, how to appeal to their egos, not make them feel bad about it, because as soon as you make people feel dumb, then they're going to resist, and they're not going to come along with you. And so that's been a career-long journey for me, because I'm not always good at that, because I feel like I see things before other people see them. And that's not always a good thing, right? So important to master your subject and to be the expert, but the real work in leadership is winning over the hearts and minds of people.
Wendy and I are furiously nodding. Yes, that was yeah.
That's it, right? That's the work. That's the real work. We can all read about the metrics that matter for e-commerce. That's not the work. The work is changing how people are going about it. And I think that means, as you're becoming a sponsor, then you're looking for those people who also go along with you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I also continue to work on this. I think it's something you all said I can very much relate to. I would give that same advice to my earlier self. I think the only thing I would add is that little voice that when it is, you hit those peaks of like, oh, this is the worst. Like this feels really not good. This too shall pass. Like in the back of my mind, reminding myself, or like, catch a breath. This is part of the process. This phase will pass. You're meant to learn something from it and take it for what it is to learn. And so, that part, I would advise. I still tell myself it's all the time, especially if anyone wears a parent hat out there. Jamie, thank you for your question here. Jamie writes, progress isn't always linear or visible, especially when you're leading long-term initiatives or driving change. How do you stay motivated and maintain momentum during those quieter phases when results aren't immediately apparent? That's a good question, Jamie.
Yeah, from one of our interns.
I love it. It's a really good question.
I guess I'll jump in and just say, when business is good and when you're growing, like that's the easy part, right? Like you're feeling really good, and that's when it's easy to stay motivated, to your point. And I think, when things aren't going well, business-wise or with your segment, that's when the grit comes out, right? Like that's when you really see who is able to kind of get through the hard times. And so, I don't know if, I can give you like, do this or this to stay motivated and keep your momentum. But I think that's just when you dig in and you grit through it. And if you can, I think that is recognized and seen by your org.
I think for me, part of it is paying really close attention to the path along the way and pausing to recognize and learn. It's not all good. It can be oftentimes there's many things that are challenging, and that everyone gives each other grace. But sometimes showcasing even the act of the right attitude and the right momentum, and the grit is one way I would very much articulate it, but there are always things you can control. And if you channel your energy along those things that you can control, you'll feel progress. And those are the things, especially as, leader, even when, being a member of a team, leader of a team, that oftentimes when we're trying to wait for that last immediate moment of like, we've crossed the finish line, we hit the KPI, we hit the end result, you lose sight of like, there are many, 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 many things along the way in the progress of change that can be paused, reflected on, rewarded, debriefed, learned from. So doesn't feel so quiet in the journey, in the path to running the marathon versus the sprint?
I think for me, building longer term capabilities, that's where like those moments where it's like we're not short focused on like the short term results of the quarter, you can really make some great progress. And for me, it's always progress over perfection. Sometimes you just get in a paralysis of like, I can't do everything. I've got to hit the numbers. So like those things kind of longer term, I would say building, shaping falls to the wayside, but that's the opportunity to say, you know, I've always recognized there's an opportunity here. Let's run a pilot in kind of those quieter periods, get something off the ground. And really kind of back to Anu's point, like start to influence on where you see opportunities in those points where it's not clear against the KPIs. It's like, what's next? And kind of surfacing those opportunities to say, here's where I could add value. You know, this has always been a challenge. Here's an opportunity. And now that it's in that quieter period, let's really tackle this. Can I pull together a scrum team or, you know, get some resources to really just pilot this through and see if it can deliver?
You didn't answer for me too. I don't do well with this part. And this was Jamie's question. I look for really good operators to work with me. I don't get inspired by the quiet times. Just don't.
One thing you're my favorite person on the planet, Anu, because you keep it real. Like you say, you share exactly.
I like building. The operating stuff is not exciting for me.
No, and hello to Laura. Good to see you. I just saw you join another familiar crew from the J&J crew. Thank you for your comment here. Maybe I'll wrap us up. I'll ask you each to leave us with one. Oh, actually, Samantha just had one quick question. So maybe we'll see if anyone has a perspective, and then I'll ask you to leave us with one piece of advice. But Samantha's question here is what's a piece of advice you received early? It's like you saw my notes here, Samantha. What's a piece of advice you received earlier in a career that you did not fully understand at the time, but now find yourself returning to it often?
You have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
That's a good one. I like that.
I already mentioned it, but being patiently aggressive, I was told that very early on. And like I said before, I bring that up all the time now. And yeah, I appreciate it much more as I'm further down my career.
Kind of my opportunity area of kind of like that bluntness, grit turned into my mantra or motto now, which is the 3 C's of candor, courage, and challenge. So I kind of reshaped that as like, I don't ever want to lose that. But for me, like candor is different than like bluntness. It's like, I'm still going to be honest, but to Anu's point, I'm going to figure out how to read the room and be candid in a way that really gets people like nodding their head versus their backs up. And then for me, courage and challenge is always like feeling like I can say and bring people along, but stand up and have the courage to do what's right. My audience, know the timing, really prepare the delivery, prepare the data. For me, is shaping what is really authentic to me, but in a way that people receive it well.
It's great advice. I think mine, I have to admit, I've been told more than once, twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times is it's okay to slow down to speed up, which may or may not have been the theme of my mid-year review this year. So, you know, when you're in charge mode, I can have this tendency to be, I want to bring people along, and I'm in the front, but then I'm running back and I'm pushing and then I'm making circles and sometimes I need to learn how to just like, let's take a step back and let's catch a breath. So probably also how I'll wrap in advice that I would give to slow down in order to speed up. Thanks, Anil. I know I drink way too much coffee. With that said, I just, Jamie, I'm going to turn it to you to wrap us up here, but I just want to thank you so much, Wendy and you, Molly. This was fun. And I loved hearing more about your stories and your perspectives. So really, really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone for dedicating the time this afternoon to listen and join in the conversation. Jamie, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Jennifer. This has been such an amazing conversation. A lot of takeaways for myself. Unveiled is so excited to host events like this. So I just want to share a few closing invitations to everyone. If you enjoyed this conversation, we would love to continue to hear from you. LinkedIn is a great place where we do a lot of posts and we also share a monthly newsletter and have a website, unveiledbridgingthegap.org. So please visit and consider engaging with us more going forward. We also invite you to become a member of our growing network. We have 4 different membership tiers, so please feel free to check it out on our website or reach out to myself or Jen or our founder, Sahana, if you have further questions about that. And support our mission with the donation to ensure that we can continue offering programming like this and events to support the needs of our community. And this one is big. Unveiled has just announced an exciting milestone of Press Pause. Press Pause is a unique 6-month experience to reset, recalibrate, and rise stronger. So applications open next week. If this resonates with you, we'd love for you to apply. If you want to be a mentor for our participants, also please reply with mentor to our email address. And of course, share with others in your network who might be interested. I think it's relevant for all levels of professionals. I've been through one of Unveiled's programs before. It was a different one, but it was much more focused specifically on sponsorship. This Press Pause is kind of taking a step back in the conversations that you have before you even embark on seeking or making yourself ready to be sought by a sponsor. How do you identify your goals and your career goals and your overall life goals? So I think this is going to be a great one. So thanks again for joining. Every voice matters. I felt it here today and really appreciate your time on behalf of Unveiled.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.